Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Dead Space 2, Zealot difficulty, no damage, no upgrades, no items, no shop. No everything, basically. This is Chapter 9, and this is an incredibly difficult, albeit rather short section. It begins with a slasher, followed by some 3 leapers, and the only silver lining of this immeasurably dark encounter is that the leapers are the white ones, and the white leapers are weak, so you can take off their limbs quite effectively with a single shot. And if you control them like I did just then, it looks like an easy fight, doesn't it? Do not underestimate leapers ever. There's a good reason why a lot of people choose to stasis them, because they move so erratically and so dangerously. Oh, be careful here too. If you get hit in the spawning animation of this particular necromorph on this vent, it will flinch you long enough for him to set you up in a throw that's inescapable. And I say inescapable because I can't take damage. If you're not playing with my stipulations, you'll be fine. And then as you push forward here, you'll meet some of the exploding babies, which you want to pick up this lunchbox, or this carpenter's toolbox, or whatever it is, and proceed to throw it at their faces. If you hit them in the face, you will then be able to use their bodies as an explosive. So, definitely worth knowing that this can be done, and also definitely worth doing. Not to be mistaken with, you know, psychopathic tendencies of wanting to hurt children, which there seems to be somebody in the comments who's rather enjoying some of my phrases when you take them out of context, because I like shooting children in the face. Obviously in a gaming sense, but, you know, some people like to have fun with it. And then across here we have one of the conduit rooms that I believe you got access to by playing, is it Dead Space Extraction or something like that? Something silly or other, which I'm not too familiar with, so I'm not going to speak about it. But this level really ramps it up. All of these encounters can be saved before, so if you're having any issue with them, and you don't want to do a string of encounters on one attempt, you can go back and save. It is a valid strategy. Only the most purist of the challenge running people will probably hold it against you, but I wouldn't. It's so easy to take damage in these games that if you're wanting to enjoy the challenge, sometimes a nice safety save can be what you need to enjoy, but other people enjoy doing it and getting the stress and the tension of having to do quite a lot in a single run. But this room is very generous. There are plenty of spikes to be used, and if you want to do that, you can impale the lurkers and not waste any ammunition. If I had recorded this again, I would have done that, but I want, as I mentioned in the previous video a little bit, when I record walkthroughs or runs, unless it's something very particular, I like them to be as honest as I can make them. And when I say honest, I don't mean that I don't edit them and I snort through them like a pig, and then I somehow think that they're in some ways better than everybody else's, even though I've put 0 effort into them. I mean honest in a way that this was the run that was successful. It might not be the cleanest, but it's the one that I got, so it's the one that's in there. And I do think sometimes that juxtaposition can make it more interesting to watch. It all depends on what you're going for. That was me completely skipping a divider, and here is a room that killed me on hardcore mode, so enjoy my suffering at the memory of that. Which I think this is an incredibly cheap room. And I do it just as I mentioned there. 2 shots from the plasma cutter is not even enough to take off the limb of the black necromorph. So as far as resources go, that's a good way of dealing with that room. But this section here is one of my favourite rooms in the game, because it's immaculately designed. And everything in this game is really well designed, but this has an eye to it that has almost a time attack kind of speedrun, meticulous nature, which I love. And you pick up the barrel, you get rid of the lasers. You pick up that object, reveals a flame pod, you fire it into the Guardian and he dies instantly. There's just such a wonderful eye for design with that, because if you were to shoot that creature, it would take a lot of ammunition. It'd take maybe 2 shots per limb, and they have maybe 6 limbs that come out of their central area. So it's a really good idea to do what I did, because it kills it instantly. And that enemy has a kill box in front of it and is capable of firing projectile spamming enemies, so he's a very dangerous threat. And to be able to take him out so easily and so well is just beautiful foresight from the developers. And it sucks to be the Guardian, don't get me wrong, because he's an enemy you barely see, and it would be really nice if they'd evolved him into a form that could perhaps get off the wall. Can you imagine that in Dead Space 3, a Guardian that gets off the wall and completely overthrows everything you know about them? But then Dead Space 3 would probably be a really good game, right? And instead it's kind of lackluster. But this elevator is going to have a cinematic moment. There's going to be a necromorph moving forward here. I believe that is one of the spitters. There'll be an explosive dude. And then from this point onwards, there's going to be a bunch of guys in this doorway. So I'm going to wait for them to pool up and perhaps hit them both. And it didn't quite work, so instead I catch the spit and then I deal with it that way. There is a spawn coming up here that I completely forgot about, which is one of the divided parts that's behind an objective. And you're going to see me turn tail and run because my instincts kick in and I don't have the confidence to just kill it before it hits me, and I didn't want to ruin all my progress even though I should have used the save point. And if you're going to try and do this run, guys, here's a piece of advice for you. Never pass up a save point. If you get to a save point, just use it. Even if you're on fire and you're the sharpest you've ever been, trust me guys, the amount of times where I could have saved and saved myself a headache was like 3 or 4 times, so it's not a lot, but in the grand scheme of it, this run was super smooth. I had a whale of a time, it was really, really fun. The only parts I didn't like was the final boss, and that's the reason why it's going to be under the conditions that it is, but for everything else, I had a ton of enjoyment at almost every moment, because the game's fantastic, it's even better on PC, and this kind of challenge run is surprisingly viable. I didn't even know when I started it if this was possible. And it turns out, it's not only possible, but almost beneficial, because it's going to teach you a measure of respect that you perhaps didn't have. And when I went back and looked at like my Dead Space 3 walkthrough, my Dead Space 2 walkthrough, my gameplay just looks like shit. It's one of those interesting moments where... Oh, by the way, guys, there's a mechanic where if you hit slashers when they're climbing with an object on a limb, it can instantly kill them. So you know that that would not normally do that to a black slasher, but because he was in the mantle animation, you get these interesting properties, and I've tested it a bunch, but I'm still not certain how it works, because sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. All I'll say is practice and repeat it and try and get that run, because it saves so much ammunition. But there is a transportation device that I've trimmed out. But as I was saying, going back and seeing those old gameplays, it can make you feel a little bit self-conscious, because you think, oh my god, what was I doing? Why didn't I do this better? Why didn't I do this cleaner? But what you need to bear in mind is, you were a different person then, with different standards and different abilities, and in that moment in time, that was your best work. That was what you felt represented you in that instant the best, and you were happy with that. So, if you were to look back at it, and you were okay with it, then perhaps you're not as critical as I am of your own work, because I'm my own worst enemy with that, but at the same time it makes me strive for excellence. So when I look back on older things, I do get quite self-conscious and feel that they're not good enough, they weren't of a high enough level. But I also understand that there are people that really like that aspect of it, that it isn't perfect, that it isn't this ridiculous, you know, flawless, unbeatable run. So it's hopefully something for everybody, right? But it did motivate me to want to go back to Dead Space 3, as shocking as that might sound, because I do not like that game, and I don't like that game so strongly that I do not remember it. I've almost erased it from my brain. I have black spots with Dead Space 3's logo on them, and it's kind of strange. But this is a stalker room, and this is probably the toughest stalker room in the game in my opinion. Because not only does it have a bunch of exploders, and then it's bookended by a guardian, but it also has cysts that can catch you off guard, the little ball sacks that are everywhere, and it just has an interesting ebb and flow of about 2 to 3 spawns. So my advice here is that once you are comfortable with the room, or if you're not comfortable with the room, sorry, do as much as you can, and then go and save. And then come back in and do as much as you can, and then go and save. And whenever you have to push forward and put yourself in a bad situation, go and save. And it will save your progress, and you'll continue from where you were in the room. Obviously this technique to some people sounds cheap and cheesy, and if you're averse to that, don't save. But the option is available for you if you want to, and in my opinion, that's the best way you can design difficulty. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of autosaves, right? No, I'm only kidding. Autosaves are garbage. Autosaves are so bad. All they do is put you in spots that you were never in, and they force you to face consequences that you didn't earn, because it wasn't the situation that you occurred or had to face originally. It was the one that the developers thought, that's where we'll stick the checkpoint, that's where we'll stick the autosave. And it leads to a whole host of essentially regrettable scenarios. And the good thing about manual saves is that you pick your poison. If you want to do something in one run and have that stress of 5 minutes of gameplay with no mistakes, you can choose to do that. If you want to save after every successful kill, you can turn that 5-minute stretch into 20-second sprints and get to the end of that marathon with a million fail safes. It all depends on the person who's playing and how they want to do it. And for somebody like myself, I like a combination of the two. I appreciate the longer battles because I think that they can give you a challenge and an experience that you don't get on the shorter ones. But normally, I'm not a big fan of large engagements interspersed by quiet moments and no checkpoint. To me, if an engagement is 2 minutes long, it's perfect. If it's 10 minutes long, I don't want to do it. If it's 10 minutes long but done skillfully can be done in 2 minutes, then it's perfect. And speaking of perfect, my strategies here are not perfect. If you want to save more ammo than I'm saving, you can save the cysts. The cysts can actually help you here by dismantling the stalkers, and then you can proceed to attack the stalkers. My problem with them is that they are incredibly difficult to hit with telekinesis. And there's a couple of pieces of footage later on where I shoot telekinesis directly at a leg of a running stalker, and it does nothing. And my advice to people playing is only ever shoot telekinesis claws at their head. And it's a backwards piece of advice because not only is it not maximum damage, but it's not where you're intended to shoot the enemy. However, the amount of times I've missed the limbs even when I've hit them and been hit or killed myself is too high to mess around unless you know how to do it. That's the distinction. If you have it down and you do it easily, then keep doing it. But for us who can't do that, my advice is if you see them poke their head out, try and hit them then. If you see them fall down, hit them all you want because they cannot dodge. But for the most, when they're running, deal with them accordingly. That's the safest means. And one of the safest means to do that is to hit them with the body to knock them over. And I've got a lovely showcase of that later on, which I should have really done in this room, but in all honesty, I hadn't got that strategy yet. So that's another one of those food for thought scenarios. That was a waste, but I have so many of those freeze tanks that I didn't mind doing it. And I knew the moment that happened, it would spawn more enemies. And I didn't want any of the stalkers to get behind me. You'll notice when you watch speedrunners do rooms like this, they know the positions of the stalkers, and they freeze them with stasis and they run past them, and they just end the room. I like to fight these rooms, but I don't do it aggressively. And the reason I don't do it aggressively is because the nature of an enemy like this, they have all kinds of abilities to jump over boxes and rush you from behind, and you never want to have them on both sides of you. If you have them behind and in front, controlling stalkers is probably one of the hardest fights in the game. Right there I'm contemplating whether or not I want to carry that forward, because I know I can use it on the Guardian, but at the same time I also know that there is an explosive barrel that you can fire at the Guardian that will kill him instantly. So the only things really going through my head in this circumstance are, is there any more stalkers going to spawn, and will any exploders spawn close enough to me to be a problem? To which the quick resolution there is the stasis on my back. I have one charge of stasis, and I'm probably about 90 seconds away from having a second one, so I can use stasis quite willingly and wastefully, because I'm confident in my ability to not really need it. Stasis in this game is so powerful, a lot of people could call it a crutch, but at the same time, you are so capable as Isaac that you don't even have to use it really. But there you go. This is a wonderful piece of design. I love the fact that they put those next to this enemy. I really do. And I can see the perspective that maybe it takes away the challenge of them, but I don't think the Guardians are meant to be hard. I think they're meant to be terrifying. They're an enemy that has this shock value and this freak value that doesn't necessarily get negated or complemented depending on their difficulty, so I think that this is okay. And I love the stasis of it dying. That was so grisly in the slow motion. What a wonderful effect. But it would be cool if they did other things. And additionally, I think I would prefer it if the cylinder that kills them instantly was a little bit harder to get. It'd be nice if it was hidden in such a way that you had to know to look for it. Like perhaps there was a light fitting that was flickering or sparking and hanging off its hinge a little bit, and if you shot it, it fell down and something from the roof toppled one of the cylinders, and it was one of those interesting things you either know or you don't know, and you see somebody do and you go, that's amazing. If it was something like that, where you picked up a piece of furniture and it was underneath it, so you had to explore and find it first, it would reward knowledge more than simply an incredibly powerful tool, and I think I'd like that a little bit better. But in the grand scheme of finding things to nitpick in this game, it's very difficult to do. Like, does it frustrate you that you want to get a claw to kill the slasher that's about to kill you, and you pick up someone's leg, and it's a floppy leg, and you might as well be waving a silly shake weight in their face? Yes. But at the same time, it's Dead Space, you know, it's always kind of had that. And there's a wonderful technique, guys, for not having that happen as I get snuck up on by this monster in the closet just here. And he only takes one hit, so I think I should have used the body then to kill him and I would have saved a bullet. I don't know why he's so weak. I think it's because they spawn him so close, and it's one of those, oh, try not to shit your pants, but they don't want it to be too cheap, so they don't give him a lot of health reserve. But the strategy I'm talking about, folks, is you can preempt kinesis and you will never have to worry about picking up the wrong thing. And it's something you see speedrunners doing, and it looks amazing. And all they do is when they shoot, they quickly stasis afterwards. It's like a tattoo, a tap-tap, you know, like a double bass kick drum where one bass kicks, the second bass kicks shortly after. And that's what they do. So they're always assuming that their shot dismembers, and they're catching the limb before it's had a chance to fly away. And you'll see footage of me shooting a limb, it floats away, I catch it in midair and fire it back, and it looks kind of sweet and kind of cool and stylish, but it's not optimized as preempting it so it doesn't fly away. And that's how they grab the limbs so quickly. So it's definitely something to try and get into your repertoire. But right here is a manipulation of some tripods. If you keep him close to you and you bait his horizontal swipe, you can keep him in one spot and he will never jump and he'll never be a problem because he's actually a bit of a bitch. And I figured out that if you can grab the flames as you're coming down this lift and hit that canister, you can do that section before you even have to engage him. And I tested engaging him to see if it was a better strategy. I killed 5 tripods before I realised that they wouldn't stop coming. You have to destroy the piece of machinery. If you don't do that, you'll fight an infinite amount of those creatures, and it's just not really worth it. And we're coming up on the end of the chapter now, guys, so we're returning to the Ishimura. And the next sequence, the next chapter, is easily one of the most difficult in the game. The Ishimura chapter has some of the most demanding fights in it. It's kind of ridiculous, and my ammo starts to get a little bit low, and I'm not gonna lie, folks, I got a bit worried at some parts, and it forced me to do some interesting things, so I hope you look forward to the peril as it ensues. Thank you for watching, you take care now.